The joint fleet assembled at Kepler Station, a massive orbital platform that had become the last major stronghold between the Devourer swarm and the galactic core worlds. Kethvar positioned his research vessel among the command ships to observe the unprecedented cooperation between human and alien forces. Ships from 12 different species floated alongside human vessels that looked like they had been assembled from spare parts and determination. Colonel Sao. Steve Baker stood before a holographic tactical display in the station's main briefing room, surrounded by alien military commanders who regarded his proposals with obvious skepticism. The human ground assault leader was explaining attack strategies that violated every principle of established galactic military doctrine. Instead of avoiding direct confrontation with the Devourer swarms, Baker wanted to get close enough to deploy specialized weapons that had never been tested in real combat. The alien commanders expressed their concerns through translators that struggled to convey the full extent of their disbelief. General Thakmore of the Corvani military argued that conventional wisdom dictated maintaining maximum distance from Devourer forces while using long-range weapons to gradually wear down their defenses. The crystalline Vorthak representatives chimed their agreement, their musical voices creating harmonies of doubt and fear. Baker listened patiently to each objection before responding with calm confidence. The conventional approach had failed, repeatedly against an enemy that learned and adapted to every attack pattern. The Devourer machines had already analyzed and countered every weapon system in the galactic arsenal. Victory required tactics that the artificial intelligence could not predict or understand. Dr. Jennifer Cole presented the technical specifications for the electromagnetic pulse weapons that human engineers had developed in secret laboratories scattered across the frontier colonies. The devices were crude by galactic standards, built from salvaged components, and powered by experimental energy, sources that other species would consider dangerously unstable. However, their chaotic energy signatures could disrupt the precise electromagnetic fields that allowed Devourer units to communicate with each other. The battle plan that emerged from hours of heated discussion was unlike anything in recorded military history. Human ships would charge directly into the Devourer formation while alien vessels provided covering fire and electronic warfare support. The humans would deploy their experimental weapons at point-blank range, while their allies attempted to jam the machine's adaptive responses. Captain Alex Turner commanded the lead human assault vessel, a ship called Defiant Spirit, that exemplified everything alien commanders found disturbing about human military technology. The vessel had been built in a frontier shipyard using techniques that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Its hull was constructed from asteroid metals that had been processed using human-developed refinement methods. Its weapons systems combined salvaged alien technology with innovative human modifications. As the combined fleet moved toward the Devourer concentration around the contested world of Meridian Prime, Kethvar monitored communications between the various command ships. The aliens coordinated their movements with precise mathematical calculations and predetermined formation patterns. The humans operated with a level of improvisation that seemed almost random to outside observers. Lieutenant Commander Grace Thompson led fighter squadrons composed of pilots from multiple species flying ships that had been hastily modified for anti-Devourer warfare. Her human pilots flew damaged vessels that should have been scrapped weeks earlier, held together by improvised repairs and desperate ingenuity. They operated alongside alien pilots who struggled to understand how humans could function effectively, with equipment that barely met minimum safety standards. The first engagement began when Devourer patrol units detected the approaching fleet and moved to intercept. The mechanical ships formed perfect geometric patterns as they advanced, their weapon systems charging with energy signatures that had destroyed countless galactic fleets. The alien commanders prepared to execute carefully planned evasive maneuvers. Based on established tactical doctrine, the human ships did something completely unexpected. Instead of following coordinated battle plans, they scattered in seemingly random directions while maintaining loose formation around their primary targets. Captain Turner's Defiant Spirit led a group of assault vessels directly toward the largest Devourer command ship, their approach vector changing constantly in response to enemy fire. The Devourer artificial intelligence attempted to analyze and predict human movement patterns but found itself unable to process the chaotic data. Human pilots responded to threats with intuitive reactions rather than calculated responses. They modified their tactics in real time based on immediate circumstances, rather than following predetermined strategies. The machines that had easily countered every previous enemy found themselves facing opponents who refused to behave logically. Sergeant Maria Santos led the first boarding party onto a captured Devourer vessel, her team equipped with experimental electronics warfare devices that Dr. Cole's research group had developed specifically for internal sabotage operations. While alien military doctrine focused on external destruction of enemy vessels, humans had realized that the machine's greatest weakness lay in their interconnected nature. The boarding operation violated every safety protocol in galactic military history. Santos and her team entered a vessel filled with automated defense systems and self-repair mechanisms that could kill them in dozens of different ways. They moved through corridors designed for machines rather than biological beings, carrying equipment that might explode if handled incorrectly. Dr. Kevin Ross coordinated the cybernetic warfare assault from his position aboard Admiral Rodriguez's flagship. The virus programs that human computer specialists had created in isolated research facilities were unlike anything in galactic information technology. They used programming languages and logical structures that existed only in human computer systems, making them completely invisible to Devourer scanning protocols. The turning point came when Santos successfully reached the central processing core of the Devourer command ship and deployed the viral payload that Dr. Ross had designed. The artificial intelligence that controlled thousands of mechanical units suddenly found itself infected with chaotic data streams that corrupted its decision-making processes. Ships that had moved in perfect coordination began operating independently, their collective intelligence fragmenting into confused individual units. The viral infection spread through the Devourer communication network faster than their adaptive systems could respond. Dr. Ross's programs were designed to evolve and mutate as they traveled, creating new variations that the mechanical minds could not analyze or counter. Each infected unit became a transmission point for further corruption, turning the swarm's greatest strength into a critical vulnerability. Human fighter pilots exploited the confusion with tactics that pushed their damaged equipment beyond all reasonable limits. Grace Thompson's squadrons attacked Devourer units that were struggling to maintain formation, their weapon systems targeting communication arrays and coordination networks rather than main hull structures. They flew ships that were falling apart around them, using spare parts from destroyed vessels to keep their weapons functioning. The alien commanders watched in amazement as human crews continued fighting with equipment that should have been completely inoperable. Damaged ships that had lost primary power systems operated on emergency batteries and backup generators. Pilots flew fighters with cracked canopies and failing life support systems. Engineers kept weapons functioning using components scavenged from wreckage floating in space. As the battle reached its climax, the Devourer swarm began to collapse from within. The viral programs that human programmers had unleashed continued, spreading and evolving, corrupting the artificial intelligence that had seemed invincible just hours earlier. Ships that had moved with mechanical precision began firing on each other as their command protocols deteriorated into chaos. Kethvar recorded everything from his observation post, documenting the moment when galactic civilization discovered that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers, but their refusal to accept limitations. When conventional methods failed, humans invented new approaches. When equipment broke down, they found ways to make it work anyway. When faced with an enemy that could adapt to any logical strategy, they responded with beautiful chaos that defied all prediction. 3 years had passed since the Galactic Council imposed their embargo on humanity. Kethvar sat in his private research vessel at the edge of human space, monitoring communications and studying the effects of isolation on the human colonies. He had expected to document their gradual collapse and eventual surrender. Instead, he found himself witnessing something completely unprecedented in galactic history. His instruments showed activity levels in human space that defied all logical expectations. Instead of declining, human settlements were expanding. New colonies appeared on worlds that galactic surveys had marked as uninhabitable. Mining operations flourished in asteroid fields that other species had abandoned as unprofitable. Most shocking of all, Human technology seemed to be advancing faster than ever. Kethvar decided to investigate more closely. Using his diplomatic immunity and advanced cloaking systems, he positioned his ship near the agricultural world called New Kansas. The planet had been one of humanity's newest colonies when the embargo began. According to galactic agricultural standards, the soil was too acidic and the climate too unstable for successful farming. What he observed through his sensors contradicted everything he knew about agriculture. The human settlement not only survived but thrived. Vast fields of crops stretched across landscapes that should have been barren wastelands. The plants growing there were unlike anything in galactic botanical databases. Amy Carter stood in the middle of one such field, examining plants that seemed to glow with an inner light. The former farmer from Earth had become the colony's chief agricultural engineer through necessity and innovation. When the embargo cut off access to galactic seed banks and farming technology, she had to find new solutions. Kethavar's sensors detected the impossible. The crops were hybrid organisms that combined plant genetics with synthetic biological components. They drew nutrients from soil that would poison normal plants. They absorbed harmful radiation and converted it into usable energy. They grew in conditions that would kill any known agricultural species. The humans had created these marvels without access to advanced galactic laboratories or genetic engineering equipment. Amy Carter and her team used salvaged medical scanners as DNA sequencers. They built growth chambers from spare parts and mining equipment. They tested thousands of genetic combinations using methods that galactic scientists would consider primitive. But effective. Kethvar expanded his surveillance to other human worlds. On the industrial moon of Titan Base, he found metallurgist Chris Walker overseeing mining operations that extracted rare elements more efficiently than the most advanced hegemony facilities. The humans had developed new extraction techniques, using principles that other species had never considered. Instead of following established mining protocols, Walker's teams approached each asteroid and planetoid as a unique puzzle. They studied the composition and structure of each target, then developed custom extraction methods. Their improvised equipment looked crude compared to galactic standard machinery, but it produced superior results. The human miners worked in conditions that would terrify other species. They ventured into unstable asteroid fields and radiation-soaked debris zones that galactic surveys had marked as too dangerous to exploit. Where other species saw hazards, humans saw opportunities. They developed new safety protocols and protective equipment using materials and methods that existed outside standard galactic practices. Dr. Rachel Kim worked from a converted asteroid laboratory that defied every safety regulation in galactic space. Her research into quantum mechanics had produced theoretical breakthroughs that surpassed even the Council's most advanced studies. Without access to galactic databases and research networks, human scientists had developed entirely new approaches to understanding the universe. Kethvar monitored her communications and research data with growing amazement. Dr. Kim's team had discovered new properties of quantum entanglement that could revolutionize faster-than-light travel. They had developed mathematical models that predicted subspace phenomena more accurately than established galactic science. Their methods were unconventional but undeniably effective. The most remarkable aspect of human scientific advancement was their collaborative approach. Instead of competing for resources and recognition like most galactic species, human researchers shared their discoveries freely. Scientists on distant colonies worked together on projects that spanned multiple star systems. They built on each other's work without concern for individual credit or profit. Captain Nicole Hayes commanded the expeditionary vessel Freedom's Call, as it explored regions of space that galactic charts marked as empty or dangerous. Her ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, built from salvaged components and innovative design principles. It could travel faster and farther than many purpose-built exploration vessels in the galactic fleet. Kethvar tracked the Freedom's Call as it ventured into the galactic rim, areas that other species avoided due to gravitational anomalies and unstable stellar formations. Captain Hayes and her crew mapped new star systems and discovered resource-rich worlds that had never appeared on galactic surveys. They found rare minerals and energy sources that could power human civilization for centuries. The human exploration teams operated with a level of courage that bordered on recklessness by galactic standards. They investigated phenomena that other species would study from a safe distance. They landed on worlds where the environment could kill them in minutes. They adapted to conditions that would send most aliens running for the safety of known space. What impressed HFY most was their problem-solving ability. When conventional methods failed, humans invented new approaches. When equipment broke down, they repaired it with whatever materials were available. When faced with impossible situations, they found ways to make them possible. The human colonies were not just surviving the embargo. They were growing stronger and more independent with each passing month. Cut off from galactic trade networks, they had developed their own economic systems. Denied access to advanced alien technology, they had created superior alternatives. Isolated from galactic civilization, they had built something uniquely their own. HFY compiled his observations into reports that he transmitted to his superiors in the Zelani Confederacy. The responses he received showed confusion and disbelief. The data he provided contradicted everything galactic civilization knew about species development and adaptation. Most advanced civilizations required centuries of guidance to achieve what humans had accomplished in just 3 years of isolation. The implications were staggering. If humans could advance this rapidly while cut off from galactic resources, what would happen when they eventually rejoined galactic civilization? Their technological achievements already surpassed many established species. Their expansion rate continued to accelerate despite the embargo. Their independence grew stronger with each successful adaptation. As HFY prepared to move his observation post to monitor other human settlements, he intercepted a communication that changed his understanding completely. Captain Hayes was reporting the discovery of what appeared to be ancient automated defense systems in the galactic rim. The machines were dormant but showed signs of advanced technology that predated known galactic civilization. The humans were not just adapting to isolation, they were exploring regions and discovering secrets that the Galactic Council had never imagined. In trying to contain humanity's expansion, the embargo had actually freed them to venture into areas that other species considered too dangerous or unprofitable to investigate. HFY realized that the Galactic Council had made a fundamental error in their assessment of human nature. They had assumed that isolation would weaken humanity and force them to accept galactic authority. Instead, it had unleashed their full potential and allowed them to develop capabilities that could reshape the entire galaxy. The first reports came from the Outer Rim territories, where automated monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures moving through dark space. HFY was reviewing his latest observations of human colonies when emergency broadcasts began flooding galactic communication networks. Something was coming out of the void between galaxies, something that had been dormant for millions of years. The devourer swarm emerged like a plague of mechanical locusts. Ancient automated warships, each the size of a small moon, moved in perfect coordination through space. Their black hulls absorbed light and energy, making them nearly invisible against the cosmic background. They had been sleeping in the spaces between stars, waiting for some unknown signal to awaken them. The first world to fall was Kepler-7, a peaceful hegemony colony with 12 million inhabitants. The devourer ships descended from multiple vectors, their weapon systems analyzing and adapting to every defensive measure the colonists deployed. Energy shields were drained and overloaded. Kinetic barriers were bypassed by weapons that phased through solid matter. Within 6 hours, the planet was stripped of all organic and technological resources. Chairman Vextar called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The ancient chamber that had once debated humanity's fate now buzzed with panic and confusion. Representatives from every species spoke at once, their voices creating a cacophony of fear and desperate suggestions. The carefully maintained order of galactic civilization was crumbling before an enemy that defied all understanding. The devourer machines were unlike anything in recorded history. They learned from each encounter, adapting their tactics and weapons to counter new defensive strategies. The crystalline Vorthak deployed their most advanced energy weapons, only to watch the machines absorb the attacks and turn the same technology against them. The militaristic Corvani sent their finest battle fleets, which were systematically dismantled and incorporated into the growing swarm. Kethvar monitored the disasters from his research vessel, documenting the fall of civilization after civilization. The machines moved with ruthless efficiency, consuming everything in their path. They stripped worlds of resources, harvested technology, and converted captured vessels into new components for their ever-expanding fleet. Each victory made them stronger and more adaptable. The Galactic Council's military forces proved helplessly inadequate. Traditional battle tactics failed against enemies that could predict and counter every strategy. Advanced weapon systems were neutralized or turned against their creators. The carefully planned defensive networks that had protected galactic space for millennia crumbled like paper walls before the mechanical onslaught. 3 core council worlds fell within the first month. The industrial planet Nexus 4 was consumed entirely, its massive factories and shipyards converted into devourer manufacturing facilities. The research world of Sigma Prime saw its greatest scientific minds harvested, along with their knowledge, their discoveries integrated into the machine's collective intelligence. The military stronghold of Fortress Alpha, considered impregnable by galactic standards, was overrun in less than 12 hours. Chairman Vextar faced a reality that challenged everything the Council believed about their superiority and wisdom. Their advanced technology meant nothing against an enemy that could adapt to any weapon or defense. Their ancient knowledge provided no insights into machines that predated galactic civilization. Their carefully maintained balance of power was irrelevant when facing extinction. In desperation, the chairman issued orders that would have been unthinkable months earlier. Kethvar received direct instructions to make contact with the isolated humans and determine if they possessed any technology or knowledge that might help against the devourer threat. The same species that the Council had tried to contain and control was now their only hope for survival. Kethvar set course for the nearest human outpost, his ship's systems straining to avoid devourer patrol routes. The journey that should have taken days stretched into weeks as he navigated through space filled with mechanical predators. The empty regions where human colonies thrived suddenly seemed like the safest places in the galaxy. He approached the human frontier expecting to find a desperate people ready to beg for readmission to galactic society. The isolated colonies should have been defenseless against the mechanical swarm. Without access to galactic military technology or defensive networks, they should have fallen even faster than the advanced core worlds. Instead, Kethvar encountered Admiral Tony Rodriguez commanding a fleet of ships that defied every principle of galactic naval architecture. The human vessels were built from salvaged materials and innovative designs that looked crude, but functioned with surprising effectiveness. Their hulls were covered with armor plating that seemed to absorb and deflect energy in ways that conventional shields could not match. Admiral Rodriguez welcomed Kethvar aboard his flagship, a massive vessel that had been constructed entirely in human space, using techniques that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. The ship's interior was a maze of corridors and chambers that seemed to grow organically, rather than following planned blueprints. Every surface was covered with equipment and modifications that served purposes Kethvar could not identify. When Kethvar explained the crisis facing galactic civilization, Dr. Maya Patel was summoned to the briefing room. The chief scientist of the human frontier colonies carried with her data files and research materials that would change everything Kethvar thought he knew about the devourer threat. Dr. Patel revealed that humans had been encountering devourer scout units for years during their exploration of the galactic rim. While the Council had dismissed reports of ancient machines as impossible, human scientists had been studying the technology and developing countermeasures. The isolation that was meant to weaken humanity had actually given them time to prepare for a threat that other species never saw coming. The human research teams had analyzed captured devourer components and discovered weaknesses that the machine's own adaptive systems could not overcome. The ancient artificial intelligence that controlled the swarm was incredibly advanced, but also rigidly logical. It learned and adapted to new threats but could not handle truly random or chaotic responses. Engineer Paul Martinez demonstrated prototype, weapons that had been designed specifically for anti-devourer warfare. The human engineers had developed electromagnetic pulse systems that could disrupt the machine's communication networks. They had created virus programs that could infiltrate and corrupt the swarm's collective intelligence. Most importantly, they had learned to fight in ways that the mechanical minds could not predict or counter. The revelation stunned Kethvar completely. While the Galactic Council had been trying to contain human expansion, humanity had been preparing to defend the entire galaxy against a threat that no one else had recognized. Their rapid technological advancement and unconventional thinking had produced solutions that traditional galactic science could never achieve. Admiral Rodriguez explained that human military doctrine was built around adaptability and improvisation, rather than following rigid protocols. Their soldiers were trained to think independently and respond to unexpected situations with creativity rather than procedure. Their equipment was designed to be modified and repaired using whatever resources were available. Dr. Patel showed Kethvar tactical analyses that revealed how the Devourer machines could be defeated. The key was not to fight them with superior technology, but to confuse their learning algorithms with unpredictable behavior. Human crews could operate damaged equipment in ways that the machines could not analyze or counter. Human tactics relied on chaos and innovation rather than the logical patterns that artificial intelligence expected. The humans were not just offering to help defend galactic civilization. They were revealing that they had been preparing for this war, while everyone else ignored the danger. The species that the Council had tried to isolate and control had become the galaxy's only hope for survival against an enemy that threatened to consume everything. The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between three suns. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zilani Confederacy pressed his scaled hand against the observation window and watched as ships from 12 different alien species docked at the station. Each vessel carried representatives who had traveled across the galaxy for this emergency meeting. The air inside the station buzzed with tension and fear. Kethvar walked through the curved corridors toward the main assembly hall. His long legs carried him past groups of aliens speaking in hushed tones. The hegemony delegates clustered near the food dispensers, their blue skin darker than usual with worry. The crystalline Vorthak representatives chimed softly to each other, their voices like broken glass in the wind. Everyone seemed nervous about what was coming. The assembly hall was enormous, with seats arranged in a perfect circle around a central platform. Holographic displays showed star maps and data streams that painted a troubling picture. The humans had been busy, too busy. In just 50 years since first contact, they had spread across 47 star systems. Their colony ships moved faster than anyone expected. Their terraforming projects changed dead worlds into gardens in record time. Commander Jake Morrison stood alone in the human delegation area. His brown hair was cut short in military style, and his blue eyes looked calm despite the hostile atmosphere around him. Next to him sat Admiral Lisa Grant, a woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform was crisp and clean, but her face showed the strain of defending her species against increasingly angry accusations. Captain Ben Phillips sat behind them, quietly reviewing data on a handheld device. The three humans looked small and outnumbered in the vast hall filled with alien representatives. Some delegates had brought dozens of advisors and assistants. The humans had brought only these three. Chairman Vextar called the session to order. His voice carried across the hall through translation devices that turned his clicking sounds into words every species could understand. The chairman's insect-like appearance made many species uncomfortable, but his authority was absolute. He had led the Galactic Council for 300 years. The accusations began immediately. Representative Zarthul of the hegemony stood first. His tall blue form towered over the speaking platform as he gestured at the holographic displays. The humans were expanding too fast. They refused to follow established colonization protocols. They ignored warnings about settling in dangerous regions of space. Their technology was advancing at an alarming rate. The crystalline Vorthak delegate chimed agreement. Human quantum jump drives now outperformed even the most advanced alien technology. Human terraforming equipment could transform a planet in decades instead of centuries. Human mining operations extracted resources more efficiently than established Methods. This rapid progress threatened the careful balance of galactic civilization. Admiral Grant requested permission to speak. Her voice was steady as she addressed the assembly. She explained that humanity was simply trying to provide homes and resources for their growing population. Earth was overcrowded and running out of space. The colony worlds were necessary for human survival. The new technologies were developed out of necessity, not aggression. Her words fell on deaf ears. Delegate after delegate stood to voice complaints. The humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too different from established galactic norms. They refused to accept limitations on their expansion. They developed weapons alongside their peaceful technologies. They asked too many questions about restricted knowledge. Kethvar listened to the proceedings with growing interest. As a researcher studying primitive species development, he had been observing humanity since their first contact with galactic civilization. Most species took centuries to adapt to galactic society. They accepted guidance from more advanced civilizations. They followed established rules and procedures. The humans were different. Commander Morrison finally stood to address the assembly. His voice was calm but firm as he spoke. Humanity had followed all established laws. They had respected territorial boundaries. They had shared their technological discoveries freely. They had offered aid to species in need. If their methods were different, it was only because they approached problems from a unique perspective. The chairman raised his clawed hand for silence. The evidence was clear. Humanity's rapid expansion threatened galactic stability. Their refusal to accept guidance showed dangerous independence. Their technological advancement could upset the balance of power between species. Something had to be done. The vote was swift and decisive. Economic sanctions would cut off human access to galactic trade networks. Technology embargoes would prevent them from acquiring advanced alien equipment. Travel restrictions would isolate human space from the rest of galactic civilization. The humans would be left alone until they learned to follow proper procedures. Kethvar watched the human delegation's reaction carefully. He expected panic, anger, or desperate attempts at negotiation. Instead, he saw something unexpected. Commander Morrison exchanged a meaningful look with Admiral Grant. Captain Phillips closed his data device and nodded slightly. The three humans seemed almost relieved. As the session ended and delegates began filing out, Kethvar approached the human delegation. His scientific curiosity was stronger than diplomatic protocol. He had to understand their calm reaction to what amounted to galactic exile. Commander Morrison noticed his approach and smiled. The expression was genuine, not forced. Admiral Grant and Captain Phillips gathered their few belongings without hurry or apparent concern. Their behavior fascinated Kethvar. He introduced himself and asked the question that burned in his mind. How did humanity plan to survive complete isolation from galactic civilization? Most species would collapse without access to established trade routes and advanced technologies. The sanctions would cripple their expansion and force them to accept council authority. Morrison's smile widened. He looked at his companions, then back at Kethvar. His answer was simple but carried undertones that the alien researcher didn't fully understand at the time. Humans had a long history of surviving impossible situations. They thrived when backed into corners. Isolation wouldn't break them. It would free them. Admiral Grant added that humanity had always been resourceful. They solved problems by thinking differently than everyone else. The embargo might actually help them by removing outside pressure to conform to alien expectations. They could develop their own solutions without worrying about galactic approval. Captain Phillips spoke last. He thanked Kethvar for his interest and suggested that the ambassador might want to monitor human space over the coming years. The results might surprise him. The humans gathered their things and walked toward the docking bay where their ship waited. Kethvar watched them leave with growing confusion and fascination. Every other species in galactic history had begged for mercy when faced with such sanctions. The humans seemed almost eager to be left alone. As a scientist, he found their reaction worth studying. As a citizen of the galaxy, he wondered if the Council had just made a terrible mistake. 6 months after the final Devourer ship had been disabled and dismantled, Kethvar stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Unity station, watching human and alien work crews collaborate on projects that would have been impossible under the old galactic order. The massive space station represented everything that had changed, since humanity proved that the galaxy's supposed saviors had actually been its greatest defenders all along. Ambassador Karen Lewis addressed the inaugural session of the new Galactic Assembly, her words translated into dozens of languages for representatives who had traveled from every corner of known space. The woman who now served as humanity's chief diplomatic representative spoke not of revenge for past treatment or demands for special recognition, but of cooperation and shared growth that could benefit every species in the galaxy. The old Galactic Council structure had dissolved completely in the aftermath of the Devourer War. The rigid hierarchy that had placed established species above newcomers had proven useless when faced with extinction. The new assembly operated on principles of equality and merit rather than age and tradition, with leadership positions determined by capability rather than species origin or political influence. Kethvar compiled his observations into reports that would reshape galactic understanding of species development and potential. His research had documented the most remarkable transformation in recorded history. A species that had been dismissed as primitive and dangerous had become the foundation upon which galactic civilization would rebuild itself. On the reconstructed world of New Terra, Director Peter Clark overseen construction of research facilities, where human and alien scientists worked together on projects that seemed impossible just years before. The isolation that was meant to break humanity had instead forged them into something stronger, more creative, and more determined than anyone had imagined possible. The collaborative research programs produced breakthroughs that benefited every species in the galaxy. Human agricultural techniques developed during the embargo were adapted to help feed populations on worlds that had been devastated by the Devourer attacks. Mining methods created in frontier asteroid fields were used to extract resources needed for massive reconstruction projects. Medical advances born from necessity in isolated colonies now saved lives across dozens of different species. Admiral Sandra White commanded exploration fleets that had once been viewed as symbols of aggressive human expansion but now served as protective patrols for the entire galactic community. Her ships carried mixed crews of humans and aliens who worked together to map dangerous regions and establish early warning systems against future threats from dark space. The human vessels that had seemed crude and improvised compared to traditional galactic technology proved superior in almost every practical application. Ships built from salvaged materials and innovative engineering lasted longer and performed better than vessels constructed using established methods. Human maintenance techniques kept fleets operational, using resources that other species would consider inadequate. Dr. Nathan Green led medical research teams that were revolutionizing healthcare across the galaxy. The advances that humans had developed during their isolation, born from necessity and limited resources, provided solutions to medical problems that had plagued other species for centuries. Human doctors worked alongside alien physicians to develop treatments that combined the best aspects of multiple biological systems. Captain Helen Price commanded rescue operations that ventured into regions of space that other species still considered too dangerous to approach. Her crews used human-designed ships that could survive gravitational anomalies and radiation storms that would destroy conventional vessels. They saved populations from worlds that galactic authorities had written off as lost causes. The transformation extended beyond technology and medicine into fundamental changes in how galactic civilization approached problems and challenges. The human emphasis on adaptability and innovation began influencing other species to question established methods and develop new solutions. The rigid thinking that had characterized galactic society for millennia gave way to creative approaches that produced better results. Trade networks that had once excluded human space now centered around human worlds that had become essential suppliers of technology and resources. The colonies that were meant to wither under embargo had instead developed into the most productive and innovative centers in the galaxy. Worlds that had been dismissed as marginal became crucial links in supply chains that supported reconstruction efforts across multiple star systems. Educational programs combined human teaching methods with alien knowledge systems to create learning environments that produced graduates capable of thinking beyond traditional limitations. Students from every species studied at institutions where human professors taught alongside alien scholars, sharing perspectives that enriched understanding for everyone involved. The military doctrine that emerged from the Devourer War incorporated human tactical flexibility with alien strategic planning to create defensive systems that could respond effectively to any future threat. Training programs taught soldiers from every species to think independently and adapt to unexpected situations rather than simply following predetermined procedures. Kethavar reflected on the irony that the embargo designed to contain human expansion had actually freed them to develop capabilities that saved galactic civilization. By trying to limit humanity's growth, the Old Council had removed the external pressures that might have forced humans to conform to existing patterns. Instead, isolation had allowed them to explore their full potential and develop solutions that no other species could imagine. The research stations scattered throughout human space had become centers of learning that attracted the brightest minds from across the galaxy. Scientists who had once looked down on human methods now competed for opportunities to work alongside researchers who approached problems from completely different perspectives. The collaboration produced discoveries that neither human nor alien scientists could achieve alone. Diplomatic missions that had once been exercises in condescension became genuine partnerships between equals. Species that had considered themselves superior to humanity now sought human advice on challenges that their traditional methods could not solve. The former outcasts had become the most valuable members of galactic society. As Kethavar prepared his final report on humanity's transformation, he chose a title that captured everything he had witnessed over the past few years. They said humanity would fall, but I watched them rise unbroken, summarized the greatest lesson he had learned during his extended observation of the human species. Below the title, he added observations that would become foundational texts for future studies of species development and potential. Humanity's strength had never been in their technology or their numbers, but in their refusal to accept defeat. When the galaxy tried to contain them, they grew beyond containment. When extinction threatened everything, they found ways to save everyone. The final entry in his research logs described the moment when he truly understood what made humanity unique among galactic species. When you back a human into a corner, you don't trap them, you free them to become something extraordinary. The species that was meant to fall had instead lifted the entire galaxy to heights that none had thought possible. Human ships continued launching toward new frontiers, carrying hope and determination to the farthest reaches of space. The exploration, fleets that had once been seen as threats now served as guardians and discoverers, pushing the boundaries of known space while protecting everything behind them. The galaxy that had tried to diminish humanity's light had instead discovered it, was a star that burned brighter under pressure,